Recording in progress.
No, just three.
Hello. Welcome to the May 10, 2023 BAR Large Meeting in the Crawtrack Public Meeting Room at 2 George Street. My name is James Matters, and I'll be serving as chair this afternoon. The other board members present this afternoon are Buddha Subject, Seton Brown, and Eddie Bello. The city staff present are Tori Parrish and Linda Bennett. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask Linda to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston Public Meeting Channel on YouTube channel. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as follows. Introduction overview of the project by city staff, for the board, and for the public, followed by the applicant presentation, a 10-minute time limit or as determined by the chair, and with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be it owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this portion rather than the public comment. This is followed by public comment. All applications are a part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by board members. Written comments will not be read aloud given during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with the permission by the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded that there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. Applicant does not respond to comments made during this public comment portion. This is followed by city staff comments and recommendations, which is followed by the applicant's response or clarification to public comments or the city staff comments and recommendation. This will be followed by board discussion and vote. Applicant presentation is over and the public comment is closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. Results will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/bar. No item has been withdrawn or referred. And as a reminder, please turn off all of your cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. And please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Item number 1 on our agenda is approval of minutes from the April 26, 2030 meeting. Is there any discussion? If not, a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Danny's moved for approval. Luda's second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 2.
Right, item number 2 is 122 Bufane, 4 Gadsden Street, requesting final approval of a mock-up panel. This is new construction. It is in Charleston Village, High District 3, and then the old and historic district. The board did convene yesterday to address our site visit. And then this is the location of the building. The building as it exists close enough to today. The mock-up panel is right at the front corner. All right, I have an applicant.
Tom Miller, I am an owner and the builder of 122 Bufane. Just looking for approval so we can get our brick up finally.
Any questions? I visited the site. You did. Any questions, concerns, comments?
No, I mean, when we get it to board.
For the applicant?
Oh, no.
Any public comments? Sorry.
All right, so staff conditions for approval. Number 1, the shutters are to be installed adjacent to the window opening rather than offset as shown, unless the hinge accommodates this level of throw. The hinges would typically be placed inside the window jamb. At a minimum, determine how these can be placed closer to the opening. 2, the cast, I will say, number 2, I have not checked. This is from our prior meeting, but this relates to a crack in the cast stone windowsill and whether that was repaired.
It's repaired.
Okay, so 3 or 2, the outside edge of the bottom of the architrave or porch perimeter beam and the top of the porch column shaft are not in alignment, as shown in the mock-up sample panel drawings, and does not fit with the more traditional nature of the building. Staff recommends that this be remedied on the mock-up and on the building itself if this alignment is not reasonably close. And the recommendation is final approval of the mock-up with the requirement for correct column and beam alignment on the building, incorporating board comments and staff conditions.
Do you have any responses to anything, any questions? How about it?
I would like to add a couple things. So we had a good meeting yesterday. I guess main concern was alignment of the column shaft and the beam and on the mock-up panel. But then we looked at the mock-up panel kind of lagging behind of the actual construction. So we looked at the porch on Gadsden Street, and they're kind of, it's done correctly between 2 floors, but at the roof, it's still, beam is overlapping the Capitol. So, and another thing we all noticed, because the column sizes were changed from first floor to the second floor, the offset of the second floor column is, center line is not aligning with the column below, and it's all kind of wiggling back and forth. So I'm just noting this, how much it will be acceptable, because it's already true construction, not a mock-up panel. And one more thing, previously we talked about the copper flashing between the brick and the cast stone. It needs to be painted. We all agreed on that, but I just want to make sure that we're noting that. And that's about it.
Yeah, I think the reason, the disconnect there was.
Oh, just one second. Hold on just one second. Eddie?
Well, I did not, I went by the sample panel and left. I didn't stop and look at the porch construction, but I do think it's pretty critical that that be built correctly, because otherwise it'll look wrong. And that's why we reviewed the drawings to begin with, so it's a little frustrating that the drawings weren't followed. So I would not be in favor of not adhering to what was previously approved for the drawings for the porch.
It seems like mock-up panel is kind of immaterial right now because the construction is,
So far along.
yeah. So,
That's the risk you take when you build a mock-up. Wait.
yeah, but so improving the mock-up panel with conditions is it's noted. Again, because the building is already so far along, we may need to look at the building more than mock-up panel.
Well, it sounds like he wants to get the brick approved at least, and I know there's issues with approving brick without other things, but I personally think the brick looks fine. I don't have any issues with it. And I would be, again, y'all are here more than me, but I wouldn't have a problem with going ahead and approving the brick. But I just think it's important to follow the details correctly, and something that's that noticeable. I mean, I noticed it right away on the mock-up, and I should have looked at the building. I just wasn't paying attention, but
So brick and cast stone?
yeah, I would be fine.
I'm sorry.
Cast stone as well. The materials I'm okay with. It's the detailing that's my issue. Personally,
See,
I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I'll defer to my colleagues in their expertise in this regard.
so it's difficult for me to approve a mock-up if there are issues with the mock-up. If the mock-up didn't follow the plans, I'm not in favor of approving the mock-up. Now, I'm okay in approving the mock-up with comments or notes, but if there's something that you have this much difficulty with, I'm not piecemealing an approval. I don't think it's correct.
So you're not even okay, and I'm not arguing, James, but you're not okay with approving the materials
No.
at all without.
No,
the
even though I
details,
have no
right?
issue with the materials, but no.
'Cause
So
to me, they
if
could be
you can-
separate.
if approving the mock-up with conditions, approving the mock-up, but no saying that we're not comfortable with this detail and this detail because it didn't follow the plan, but we want to go ahead and move forward with the brick and the seal, I'm not in favor, no.
Well, since Paris's recommendation is to approve with the changes,
Right.
so do the staff need to see the changes on the mock-up before it's approved?
That's-
Is that what you're
so,
saying? Tori?
I was just thinking, if you're comfortable with the material, I know it's not, I mean, maybe you do a final approval for the materials. I know that's not one of our clean little bucket items,
That's if
but
you don't mind.
That's right.
Well, so how about if we just follow Tori's recommendation? So it's approval subject to staff approving the revised mock-up panel.
I just think the construction is so far along that it needs to kind of continue, but because on the building, it needs to be corrected and not play with the mock-up anymore, actually.
So
To me,
I'm sorry, excuse me.
yeah, so I think it's good enough to approve, it's just we really need to watch it.
So I would remind you, this is the third time we've looked at this mock-up.
I know,
And so if it's the third time there's great attention that's been paid to it, it's still not right. So, why is the house gonna be right? So that's the way that I'm thinking about it.
and if
But-
it, again, if it will be just mock-up, yes, to me.
I mean, if you look at Joe's plans, it's drawn right. This is not
Yeah.
that's not an issue. But if there's a motion, please.
I missed the
If I may
first two.
interject.
Go
If I
ahead.
may interject, there's also some sensitivity to dragging you all out there again that I just want to be sensitive about, unless you want to go. I mean, that's the offer, is I know you have reviewed it multiple times, and so
Let's make
if
it
you want to
simple.
put it in staff's hands, that's out.
I recommend deferral, or not recommend, sorry, I keep forgetting. I move for deferral with the mock-up built correctly per the staff comments.
Eddie's moved for deferral. Is there a second?
Staff and board,
With staff and board comments. Yeah.
I'll second.
Eddie's made a motion and Seaton has seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
I will say that if the building is not built correctly, that's a huge issue because they can't get a final CO until the BAR staff signs off, so I think I need to figure out how to resolve that. I know Joe's raising his hand. Mr. Schmidt, would you like to make a comment?
I'm trying, but I don't sound like I have a say in this. They have reconstructed the mock-up 3 times, and somehow it's been misinterpreted 3 times as far as the beam at the top of the column. On the original construction, which actually preceded the mock-up, the beam column relationship is right per what we drew until they sent the wrong size columns to the job. They were 12 on the second floor and 10 on the top floor. When they changed that out, now the beam is wider than, is out further than it should be on the 3rd floor, and we've already discussed, we have to have that corrected to get the CO to get this right. So I guess I'm imploring you to, because I think that was more of where staff was coming from. The whole intent of the mock-up is to get a building built right. The building is more right than the mock-up. I know, it's crazy. And this thing has just gotten ridiculous and stalled. If we can fix the mock-up to show the staff that the mock-up is now matching the building the way it was supposed to be designed, we can just make comment on the mock-up approval that it was not right, but it would be right on, it is right on the building, or you can just default to your deferral. But it's,
Well, I appreciate that. I wasn't here for the other 2 times it came before the board and it wasn't right. And it's the 3rd time it's not right. And so I know your long record of doing things the right way, so it's not, I don't want you to have to, and the project to suffer, but it's a little bit frustrating if you can't get the mock-up right. I mean, it worries me about the rest of the bill. And the fact that it's been 2 times already, here we are on the 3rd time, it's still not right. It's just hard to approve that, that's all.
I'm gonna reiterate my second.
So Eddie,
Thank you.
well, Eddie gave Joe the
Yeah, sorry
opportunity
about
to
that.
speak. And,
Might I interject once more? I'm so sorry, I'm talkative today. You noted the columns that were shipped were the wrong size, and you noted the correction. Are you correcting the structural placement or the
we're gonna
columns
have to
themselves?
correct the structural.
So the columns will be
They-
incorrect size as far as the original.
They are
ones.
on the, they are already been changed out by Southern Lumber. Now the beam's gotta get moved back, and that's just what they're gonna be doing, whether you have to rebuild it in a mock-up form or not, it's going to happen. I'm not gonna make it not happen.
are you,
And one of the, it's been torn down 3 times, this is only the 2nd time. I had the interim tear down
Yeah,
before it
that's
even
true.
came back.
That's
to me,
true.
So just.
so the corner top,
It's
10
out
inch.
too far because.
Yeah,
it's-
so you will
All
align
right,
them?
so, I mean, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second, and there was discussion, and during discussion, if you want to ask a question, please do, because that's what this is, so I just want to make sure I didn't lose sight of.
Yeah,
Where we were.
I think
Go-
we're
go ahead,
discussing, right?
Luda, please go ahead and ask whatever you want to for clarity.
No, we already talked about, but what I'm saying is that all columns needs to be aligned regardless. And we know that, and that will help to rework the fascia of the roof on the top floor. And beam. So what I'm saying is, regardless what mock-up panel, how it will be built, the building is under construction already, so.
Technically, that's not before us today. So it's noted, the architect's on it.
Yeah.
And that's something that has to be resolved. The mock-up panel, move for deferral.
So Eddie's made a move for deferral, Streeton has seconded. Is it any further discussion? Seeing how you vote.
Game favor.
Eddie?
Yeah.
Luda?
Nay to the,
Nay, not in favor, and I'll vote yea in favor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, this is 155 Meeting Street, requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a mixed-use hotel development, requesting a 25-foot ground floor and an additional story basement with sexual merit and context. This one is in Charleston Village, Page Districts. Not there anymore. Page Districts were 4 and 6, but there has been some zoning on the property. I'm sorry about that. And this is in the old and historic district. We'll have some context slides. This is the property where 2 weeks ago, the board voted to allow the demolition of the former Days Inn Golden Eagle Motel. This is the property today. And that was Horvath and Meeting there. All right, we are ready.
Thank you. Make sure this is working here. Great. Good evening, board members. My name is Brad Cook, Senior Vice President of Development and Strategic Property Partners, developer of this project. Thank you for your time tonight. It's an honor to be working in your city, and we're excited to share our vision with you. Mr. Chair, given the nature of this project, I'd like to request some additional time if you'd be so kind.
So how much time?
I'm not sure what's customary. I've got a lot to show you. Maybe 10 minutes?
Thank you.
While I can't claim to be from Charleston, I do have a relevant family connection to the site. My dad's been an architecture professor for over 30 years, and during most of that time, he's brought his students here to immerse them in the wonderful city you call home. It just so happens the place they always stay is the Meeting Street Inn directly north of our site. As you may know, the historic inn modeled on the traditional Charleston single-house typology. My dad would have students sketch the building with its excellent 14 piazzas. He'd then have them compare and contrast that building with the roadside hotel we now own today. When I excitedly told him about our project, he had 2 messages for me. 1, you're ruining my lesson plans, and 2, don't screw this up. Early on in our process, we found the image for you and referred to it ever since. You all know it as the 4 corners of law. It's the intersection of 2 of your most important streets, feeding and broad. Our site is at the northern end of the image. The image is a reminder to us that we're building in a special place with an incredible history and a community that's passionate about ensuring special character is not lost. To deliver the project, we've assembled a team who are passionate about working in sensitive urban contexts. Morris Adjmi Architects is leading the design team based out of New Orleans. We've had the good fortune to work with them on 2 projects in Tampa, and they've received praise for their sensitive work here in Charleston at the Pinch and 529 King Street. Locally, we've been fortunate to work with Steve Ramos as an integral part of our design team since before we ever even brought Morris on. Steve's deep understanding of Charleston's rich architecture has resulted in some amazing projects here, including collaborations with the Morris Adjmi team. His insight has guided us to where we are today. Knowing how important landscape and public realm design is to the project, we brought in Hollander landscape architects who excel at blending contemporary and traditional landscapes, creating timeless places of beauty. The development company that I work for has built a reputation for our commitment to design excellence and an emphasis on quality in the public realm. For us, that's the most important part of what we do, is how we connect with the place where we are working, and how we build long-term value not only for us, but the communities that we build in. We've taken a slow and deliberate process here. For over a year now, we've met over 60 times with different local stakeholders to listen to their thoughts about what a thoughtful redevelopment of the site looks like. We're grateful for their feedback, which has informed the concept before you all tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Asana.
Good evening, my name is Osana Dusubabone. I'm a senior designer and model styling architect. I remember being here about 4 years ago to present 529 King Street, and I'm very honored to be here today again to present our proposed 155 King Street in collaboration with Steve Ramos and Nick Masser.
Thank you for listening to the word tonight. My name is Nick Musser. I'm an architect and project manager at Morse Action. We're going to start by looking at the site, and we always look at the context, the surrounding context, and the history to learn a little bit more about the space and how we can work in the home fabric. We'll continue to expand on sort of our analysis of the site in different slides. The big line in this image shows the bounding box of our site. The basin in the foreground and the parking lot to the west, as well as sort of a variety of scales of buildings surrounding our site. Looking at some existing photos, we really look at the Main Street Inn, the scale, and as well as 151 Main Street, and the gap on our site, and are looking forward to kind of stitching this fabric back together. The Days Inn is built directly on the southern property line along Warbeck. There's no pedestrian sidewalk, and really not a great pedestrian experience in developing the state of drastic neighborhood this space. So looking at our project and our analysis a bit further, our project aims to complement the existing scale in siting the buildings along this historic street. There's a relationship with the scale. I think we'll talk about this through other slides with Main Street Inn, as well as 151 Main Street, but also the rhythm down Main Street. There are gaps and regions between many of the civic and commercial buildings that are kind of more standalone on Main Street. Again, just to highlight the frontage, we align with this Main Street Inn very purposely, as well as the 151 Main Street. It's a strong foundation for how we front on Main Street, how we meet the street. As we shape those facades and as we react to the scale of the adjacent buildings, it really informed the way we break this building down into 3 pieces. And we like to name them just so they're easy to talk about. We have the gatehouse, which is the kind of brighter pink on the bottom portion of the diagram. We have the Grand Hotel, both of those buildings fronting on Meeting, as well as the residential hotel, which is the lighter pink, kind of taller volume pushed to the middle of the site. The residential hotel is set back 100 feet from Meeting Street and 125 feet from King. We think focusing that effort and that mass and scale to the middle of the block to reduce its visibility. This slide shows on the left-hand side the revised height districts showing the 7th story district in the middle of our site. And then on the right side, the contextual kind of massing proposal, really a proof plan of what we're designing. This slide expands on the space around the buildings. As we shape each volume, we spend a lot of time thinking about how we meet the street, how we allow for pedestrian experience around the building and into the building. The entry court carves a space through connecting to our hotel kind of living room, as well as the garden court in the center of the building, where we've carved out space, for public enjoyment within the building, within the site. And then, I guess, to step back, looking at the kind of starting point on Meeting Street, we've been able to push the Grand Hotel into our site 4 feet, providing a gracious 15-foot sidewalk on Meeting Street. On Horlbeck, we've pushed the entire building north 10 feet to provide another gracious pedestrian sidewalk on Horlbeck, which connects to, again, another pedestrian sort of landscape space on the west alley that's set back from the King Street buildings as well. And it really connects into the Fulton Lane and then back into the garden court. So we're very interested in how porous this ground is going to be to really celebrate these connections. Looking at this another way, we've had a site section through our project. So as a pedestrian walking from the meeting through our entry court on the right side, we can pulling off in the living room, meandering through the garden court, back out through the passageway and into Fulton Lane. It's kind of naming a lot of these places, but there's some really wonderful moments through this procession, through the site. And a lot of that's done because we're able to vary parking and take that off grade, and as well as elevate parking. So really maintaining this very pedestrian ground floor space. Looking at the site plan, if I were to arrive by car, driving south from the meeting, turn into our entry court, it's a one-way drive. You come around the turn, drop your car at LA, and they would take the car down to the below-grade cellar from a ramp from this entry drive. You might never get back in your car when you're in Charleston. It's really wonderful to be able to do that in the city. You wander through the living room, again, as I described in the site section, through the garden court, and really enjoy all this active space. All of the pink on this diagram is highlighting active space on the perimeter of the building, every corner, and much of the interior is very active. It's really been a focus of the project and the development for the site plan. Moving up the building, a minimal amount of hotel program on mezzanine. This second floor, you start to see hotel keys in blue at the bottom right, event space and some more hotel amenities. Hotel keys continue to stack as you go up the building. On level 4, you start to see condo units in yellow. This plan stacks again for floor 5. Floor 6, we start to see the Grand Hotel drop off at 5 stories, and the building sets back that 100 feet from Meeting Street. Again, floor 7 is similar to 6. As we get up to level 8, that we'll talk about, in length throughout this presentation, we really focus the interior space to the pink and gray areas in the middle of the site, really reducing visibility from the surroundings. And really that 8th floor space is surrounded by a garden oasis, as we're describing it. It's a really kind of lovely surrounding to that minimal rooftop addition. And then we included the roof plan just to highlight very small text. The mechanical well in the center of the plan, where we've depressed and lowered the mechanical well to high mechanical equipment, really kind of embracing this sort of rooftop addition as something beautiful that we've seen, but not the equipment. So we're going to hand off to Rosanna in a second. We're super excited to embrace the history of the Grand Hotels in Charleston, and start to figure out how we can participate with that history now and in the future.
I'd like to continue to share our design process. We would like our design intent is to be contextual from a large scale of urban design as Nick presented to a smaller scale to detail, illustration, proportion, materiality, and texture. Our design process starts by spending time looking at the context and concept images. We fell in love with the intricacy of the detail of the wrought iron on the balcony, and we were fascinated by the sequences of the arches of the state arsenal. And this kind of beauty and aesthetic remind me more than one time the beauty of my own town touring in Italy. And then continue the research of concept images. We were searching for architectural expression of the facade, and we were very interested in how City Hall and 43 Broad Street break down the facade in a base, middle portion, and top by like a strong horizontal element, but there is also a vertical reading, and often like a central spread that the facade is very much stressed. And walking around Charleston, we were amazed by the variety of balcony. Enclosed Juliet balcony, and we especially love the Bradford Ori House detail of the guardrail that you will see in our project reinterpreted in a modern flavor. And of course, courtyard, alley, and all the open space are such a big part of Charleston. And what was interesting for us is that often you find those interstitial spaces just by chance, by walking around, and surprisingly, you meet like a hidden fountain and beautiful moments. And of course, this was a great inspiration for the concept of the public realm that we wanted to incorporate in our project. And moving and sharing further our design process with you, we almost here want to open our sketchbook, sharing some of the many sketches and work where we did to get the design. Here is about composition. So we start from composition and how to break the mass, how to respond to the context. So the gatehouse respond to the meeting street in, and the Grand Hotel facade respond to the larger scale of the office, but the idea is to still have an ensemble reading as the composition together. And at the bottom row, of course, our compositional inspiration. And focusing on the Grand Hotel facade, our research was focused on facade articulation, depth, and detailing. We particularly loved the detail of the column capital, how sculptured they are. And in our building, those details becomes a modern plastic curve. And then moving forward, we envision this courtyard, beside this functionality, was tentative and to kind of embrace the town, the city, and bring our project, our building into the fabric of the city. And of course, the residential hotel facade wants to pay homage to the cast iron of Charleston, and the rhydon and the repetition of the arches is there, having in memory State Arsenal. The gatehouse is more related in proportion and fenestration to the meeting street in, but in materiality, choosing like natural limestone is related to the base of the Grand Hotel. And if you notice very subtle detail, there is almost like an imaginary line that runs from the top of the gatehouse to the fourth floor to the fourth floor of the meeting street, creating this continuous ensemble. And here I will have Nick continue to talk how those preliminary ideas becomes an imaginary for the project, with the tentative to express how the timeless beauty and character of Charleston can really influence a modern architecture that really proudly can fit the context.
So we try to engage the existing context at all scales. When we look at the scale of the height and mass of the gatehouse related to 121 Main Street. But we also look at the rhythm of the windows and the openings, the way they're arranged in a coherent, balanced composition. We look at each of the buildings separately, but they also, described, it work really well as an ensemble, as a grouping. And you start to see a little bit of the conservatory as we're describing, at the top of the building. We're working down the entry court in the foreground, kind of opportunities for sidewalk dining within the loges, really activating this ground floor space, as much as possible, really making us feel like, a very enjoyable, flowing space for guests and citizens of the city. The next view is really just a kind of snapshot of the material palette that we're working with. We are choosing materials that are authentic to Charleston, and also authentic in their look and their function. Things like natural stone and brick, and really beautifully detailed ornamental metal. And we want to design and detail buildings that age well and will be part of Charleston's heritage for a long time. It's very important for us to do that in all of our work. Moving to Oral Deck and the West Alley facades. This is a facade that we've spent time breaking down the mass and the volume of this, really looking at these vertical proportions that feel appropriate to Charleston, looking at the rhythm of the ground floor, and how that's a more active pedestrian space on all sides of the building. The Grand Hotel really anchors this intersection of Meeting and Horlbeck. providing, again, this really wonderful, gracious 15-foot sidewalk on Meeting Street, and 10-foot sidewalk for the length of Horrellbeck. The Grand Hotel really, animates that ground floor with canvas awnings, and stone base, and then transitions to these masonry bookends at the residential hotel. So that meets the ground, with some really wonderful brick detailing, kind of measured pace to the openings. There's a great rhythm down the street with the awnings and the storefront, really kind of engaging the pedestrian. This is a view at the southwest corner of the site, kind of at the project extends. This is a view, a glimpse of the west alley that connects to the north and potentially to Market Street. Another landscaped kind of lush space that will be activated with various programs, public programs. And then we kind of move into this alley a little bit more. As Rosanna mentioned, we spent a lot of time wandering through and exploring Charleston's alleyways, and really love those moments of kind of chance and kind of surprise. So as you move through Fulton Lane, this is, one of those moments to kind of excite, surprise someone as they happen upon this, again, this language of the ornamental metal passageway that connects into our garden court. I'm going to speak about the 8th-floor conservatory just briefly. This is meant to be residential in scale, light and airy, very much a conservatory kind of architectural language, looking at the ornamental metals, glass, and plants, essentially. Again, we're kind of burying the mechanical equipment in this well, in this roof. So we think that's a really wonderful way to cap the building. As I mentioned, the conservatory is pulled in, refocused to the middle of our site, surrounded by this tranquil oasis garden. And I'm going to hand it off to Steve, who's going to take the step off.
Good news, we're almost done with this long presentation, so thanks for the additional time. It's a big project and it takes a while to get through. We're asking for conceptual BAR approval tonight.
You usually talk a lot, so it might not have been wise to put it at the end.
I'll expedite my speech tonight. We're also asking for approval of this 8th floor, partial 8th floor, based off of architectural merit and context. And we know that that's a big request for this board. It's one we have not taken lightly. And it's true, we've been working on this for over a year, and we feel good about what we're presenting. But I'm going to speak to that. I'm going to speak specifically to context first, because I feel like that's arguably the most important part of this test, for lack of a better word. So I thought the best way to do that is to walk around the site to see what the building looks like in the streetscape. So this is at the corner of Market and Meeting Street. As you all know, the Days Inn kind of creates a void in the streetscape, and great care has been gone into sculpting a massing that makes a great infill, and specifically breaking it into this 3-story mass and the 5-story mass. We feel like it's very effective for Meeting Street, as well as the pushing of the taller part of the building back 100 feet from the street. That we feel like is a comfortable location for a taller mass, and we feel positive about that. I think it's worth noting that we're being sensitive to the context, but we're also contributing in a very positive fashion with the 15-foot sidewalk on Meeting Street, a new 10-foot sidewalk on Horrellbeck, and this amazing alley that's going to occur on the western side of the site. Just the idea that you'll be able to walk around that corner on Horrellbeck, and there'll be this wraparound restaurant, we feel really positive about. And the way that we've broken down the scale along Horrellbeck into these smaller masses, we feel like is a positive way to handle what is a larger building. We also understand that the view shed of King Street is paramount. King Street is the best room in Charleston, and when you are on that street looking north or looking south, we do not want to disrupt that. That is very critical. And we've looked at this building on King Street. We are confident that there certainly will be no disruption. But from viewpoints such as this at Horrellbeck and King Street, you will see a very handsome structure 125 feet back from King Street. This is a viewpoint from Clifford Street. As you know, Horrellbeck turns into Clifford. as it goes west on King Street. This is a view down the little Fulton Lane. So at the end of this view, you can't see it here, but there'll be a fountain on the facade of the building to help draw people in to what is going to be, we hope, one of Charleston's next great alleys. And an area where the building does become more visible is if you start to back up along Fulton Lane. You get to a point around 300 feet away where you will be able to start to see the building, but by no means do we feel like it overpowers King Street, and we think it will add a nice thing to the skyline. This is a vantage point actually on King Street, which again I think is the most important view corridor. And if anything, you'll see that little corner of the building right there between Princess Lane. And so it's just marginally visible. I also want to highlight that that 8th floor that we're requesting is not visible from King or Hurlbeck. Probably the biggest visibility of the project will be from Market Street, looking across what is now a surface parking lot. One day that may change, but for now, the building certainly would be visible. This would be with Charleston Place to your back. The architectural merit test or definition talks about 4 things: exemplary architecture and urban design. I think the images we presented showcase what we're planning to provide, that high-level architecture and urban design. Nick did a great job of talking about the high level of materials and finishes that we're providing: terrazzo, limestone, brick, lots of ornamental metal and lots of glass. And I think we very much hit that high mark. Still not sure how we're going to afford it, but we're committed to doing so. And then I think perhaps most important is the contribution to the public realm. This project is going to be transformational for this block. That's at Meeting Street, Hurlbeck, and the Western Alley, as well as the cross-block connections, and we feel really confident in that. And last, really isn't part of the definition, but we've designed a really exquisite 8th floor conservatory that we're proud of. We were kind of nudged by certain folks that this top was an opportunity to create something that adds to the skyline. And from the few vantage points that it will be visible, I think you're going to be happy that you can see it, because it's a very well-detailed, beautiful top to this building. Rosanna mentioned she's from Italy, and Nick's working in New Orleans. I was supposed to be the historic Charleston expert, but they've taught me a lot more about working in historic contexts, and I think we put forth something that is very high level, and I really hope you agree. Well, happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions for the applicant?
I have 2. One, and I realize this is conceptual, but the conservatory glass. Have you thought about tinted, because it gets hot here, and having an entirely glass ceiling is not always wise. So if you thought through, are we going to look at reflective glass? Is it going to be tinted? Is there something behind? It's only conceptual.
Yeah, we've thought about it to a degree. If you look at the section, the actual glass ceiling is just going to be at the perimeter.
Yeah.
I think, you want to speak to
I
that?
would prefer, treatments on the inside, I think, and treating that in kind of more interior fashion. And I don't know.
We'll see it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, the city is saying that you're requesting more than the first floor height. Can you talk about that a little bit and why, and how much it is? And I see that you've got,
20, I think it's 20 feet, isn't it?
25.
Yeah.
are they going to 25? So why do you need that extra 5?
Sure, so the ordinance allows for up to 20, and then you all have the ability to grant up to 25. We love the scale that it creates. I mean, I think the scale at the ground floor in terms of the storefronts, we like the way it looks, and we feel like it's appropriate for this kind of grand hotel concept.
Anything to do with parking?
No? That's That's what I was
No,
going
but
with.
it's-
We do have
there's
some
some-
parking above grade, but it's not, that's not why we're asking for that.
The mezzanine parking goes up on the corner. I could not understand.
So there is, we have
On
about
Holbrook,
200 parking spaces under the whole footprint of the building, but there is 3 levels of above grade. I'll show you the plan.
I couldn't understand circulation there at all.
So you see in the southwest corner, there's 3 levels of parking there. And it kind of does a clockwise circulation.
Yeah, so how it's expressed on the exterior is kind of interesting to see because it's continuation. Anyway, that's comments, sorry.
Yeah, you've chosen to hide it, if you will, and just bring the architecture from above down with the intent that, you might not notice it.
Eddie, more questions?
No, those are, thank you, those are the only things I was wondering about.
Stephen?
You made the comment that you're looking to add to the skyline with a conservatory, but then you shared that you won't be able to see the conservatory from King Street, Meeting Street. So what's the justification there? What's the benefit?
So at King Street and Pearlbeck Alley is what I mentioned, that it would not be visible, but it is visible from Meeting Street. So I'll show you. So this image here, so there's, you'll see that kind of rounded edge when you're on Meeting Street. And I would expect, from the Ravenel Bridge and other faraway locations that are hard to predict today, you'll get that profile of that conservatory.
Like even the color palette is very light color. We're using this like sage green that actually is very the current color as well, like some building here to make it very light, elegant, and harmonic, just to blend in the sky.
See, anything else? So, Nick and Stephen, you both mentioned the possibility in the future of the west alleyway extending to Bufane Street. So that extends why, or it doesn't extend why?
There's an existing sidewalk to the north of our site. It will naturally connect. We don't control that portion of our site to the north. Well, it's not our site, so we don't control that portion. There's a sidewalk. We expect people to move north and south through there.
It's just,
So there may be an opportunity in the future to expand what is just a narrow sidewalk to be a more, kind of a continuation of the alley.
I understood that. I was fishing for what that development may be. And we're looking to, if you have any information on that. So the answer is
Okay,
no.
one more question. Terrazzo, where is it?
It's a concrete terrazzo mix, which is on the upper floors.
So it's vertical.
Excuse me? Yes, it's a precast terrazzo mix.
Okay,
Last question.
I've never seen
The
that.
west alley that we were just talking about, roughly how wide is that?
17 feet between the site walls, and there's some kind of some gradient.
Yeah, so that's sort of.
Yeah, at a minimum of 17.
Currently how I walk to my barber shop, so that's why I was particular. So, any other questions from the board? Public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Jay Williams Jr. I live at 81 King Street, 3.5 blocks from this project. I think the images they showed in the beginning remind me of why I moved to Charleston 23 years ago. It's a beautiful town, human scale, with that. We're now talking about not Courier Square, but part of the historic district. And I look at this slide here at the very bottom, and I look at these buildings, this hotel and condo space. And while I think it's a nice project, I don't think it's an out of sync project for the city. I think the mass and scale which they talked about frequently in the presentation, breaking the math. It's really hard to break a math with what is really a 9-story building. When you consider the height of the first floor, the fact that the city council gave them a 7th floor in a 6-story district. Now we're talking about an 8th floor, which is really a 9th floor based on the height of the building. I think it's really too much for a 6-story district. It troubles me very much. I don't know if the BAR is going to be really approving a bar at the 8th floor or the 9th floor, whatever it is. But we know that that's been a problem for the city in other places. Again, this isn't Courier Square, this is downtown in the heart of the historic district. I would hate to see what this would become. Yes, this building may have some benefits for the citizens, but it's really a tourist magnet. And I know who's going to be there, people with quite a bit of money enjoy the Four Seasons Hotel. I don't disabuse them, I think it's fine. I think there are better places for hotels in the historic district, in the part of the city, but we were talking about a skyline. We've already interrupted the skyline with the Jasper, 295 Calhoun, Morrison Yard, maybe Union Pier in the future. I think we need to hold the line some. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, Justin Schroeder with the Historic Charleston Foundation. We'd first like to thank the applicants for meeting with us numerous times as the project has developed, and their willingness to collaborate and listen to our comments and concerns. Let me begin by stating this project is starting off very strongly. The architectural direction, particularly of the 5-story hotel and the 3-story building on Meeting, are beautifully designed and well-ordered facades that take cues from Charleston's architectural language with a refreshing contemporary flair. While the primary massing in the 7-story hotel behind them is more demure in its detailing, the high-quality material selection and assembly of the metal balconies adds texture and just visual interest to the facades. Our greatest concern for this project, however, has always been the height, scale, and the massing of the signs, and the need to greatly improve the north side of Rollback Alley, which is currently in a pretty sorry state. While the project does read as a 3-story building from select vantage points, does read as 3 buildings from a select vantage points along Meeting Street, the plan and the massing of the development is a singular immense structure. The facades along Rollback create a 300-foot-long, mostly 7-story wall of building immediately against the sidewalk, interrupted only by particular access points into the port share, loading docks, and the public garage entrance. We have consistently advocated for significant improvements to the pedestrian experience and architectural treatment along Rollback throughout this design process. We feel the best way to accomplish this would be to add some relief in the massing of the building along the middle of the block, and if possible, relocating the loading and material handling docks to the internal parking garages. Some additional relief from the building massing and a reduction in the amount of vehicular and trash collection services along the alley would go a long way into improving the pedestrian experience along Rollback. We also have concerns with the visual impact of the 7-story hotel from the intersection of Rollback Alley and King Street. The southwest hotel wing is the most visible elevation from this viewpoint. We feel that recessing the 6th and 7th floors for the southwest wing by a number of bays would greatly reduce the substantial impact of the jump in height from King Street and reduce the visual impact of the facade from King Street. The 8th floor amenities, being asked for architectural merit, is nicely designed and minimally visible. The design team has modified some of the rooftop volumes to reduce the visibility from Meeting Street. Ideally, we would prefer that the 8th floor structures are assembled in a way that they are not visible from Meeting Street at all. Because of the high quality materials, designs, and architectural direction, we're only recommending deferral of the application. We feel that our concerns can be addressed utilizing the existing form, and we're confident that this design team can address these issues and return with a successful application.
Sure.
American Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for meeting with us on several occasions and being receptive to hearing our feedback. Throughout our many conversations, they responded to a number of our suggestions to improve the architecture, and there's no doubt what's being proposed is high quality. From the use of an authentic material palette to substantial articulated details to the repetitive rhythm of openings and gracious glassy facades, the design is well executed and reflective of Charleston's architectural standard. However, this is a highly sensitive site, and its redevelopment will be incredibly consequential for the surrounding historic context. The impacts of its height, scale, and mass need to be weighed seriously. We opposed earlier requests to upzone its height and density because we feel the previous zoning was designed to be contextual and was sufficient at 6 and 4 stories. Unfortunately, those requests were approved, so now you're looking at a much bigger building than was ever envisioned to go here, including an additional 8th story being requested for architectural merit and context. The proposed hotel comes within 18 feet of the rear of the historic buildings that line King Street and rises to more than double their height. It will be prominently visible from multiple vantage points, towering over the historic streetscapes of King, Meeting, and Market Streets. A building of this scale will have detrimental impacts to the prevailing character of the area and set a dangerous precedent for new construction in the heart of the historic district. Therefore, we urge you to not only deny the additional 8th floor, but decrease the building's height by a half story as well. This provision was put in place to balance the various ways developments can gain more height through the entitlement process and to empower the BAR to require buildings to respond better to their context. You have the authority to reduce height and promote the preservation of the district's historic character. Please use it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Joe McGee, I'm a resident, block and a half away in Charleston Village. And I urge the zoning board's rejection of the height consideration. The way I look at it, if you look at the contextual nature of this whole area, the scale is beyond the norm. And then if you think about the height of this building with the other potential development in the areas, we talked about Union Pier, as you see what goes on around the city, in the historical area, but as you leave the historical area, go up Washington, you see block after block after block of large commercial structures, multifamily structures. All for that, we have to find a better way to limit height and density in a city that doesn't support that, and in a way that's in more character with the city that we all love. I fear that gradually, step by step, zoning decision after zoning decision, we lose what we like about this place.
Thank you. Sir.
My name is John McCullough. I live at 175 Market Street, and I moved here 8 years ago from Washington, D.C. And during that period of time, I've audited courses at the College of Charleston in historic preservation and community planning. And one of the best parts of that was Jim Ward, who was my professor, and he taught me a lot because he's a registered landscape architect. And so he has not only academic practice, but actually has done a lot of things. Without going into detail there, he couldn't be here tonight because he had a memorial service for his past wife up in Philadelphia. But we talked about this, and I wanted to share with you what his thoughts were and then give a couple of thoughts of my own. He spoke at the Planning Commission meeting, and he heads up a group at Circular that's been working on the Gateway Park, possibly. And he believes that Circular Church was built a long time ago as a meeting street for different congregations. Unlike Europe, the different religions didn't battle. They decided to make an open orientation, and therefore they wanted to have all religions being accommodated. Circular Church at that time was one of the first buildings, and he said over the years, Circular Church has gradually lost the view of, they could see at one time a number of steeples, now it only sees one or two. So he spoke eloquently, I thought, at the Planning Commission about, are we going to take the last bit of space on Meeting Street? So that was his viewpoint. He did talk to the builders, the developers also, and shared some of his views. And a couple of the major things he said was, it's a very crowded area about the parking and the circulation of the cars. Are we going to be able to really accommodate that many people in that tiny little area, which is already pretty crowded? The second thing he pointed out, he said, I did tell them that the building is too tall. is too much for that area. So that's what I wanted to bring tonight. I don't normally speak at these meetings, but I wanted to let you know what Jim Ward's viewpoint was. My viewpoint is I come personally to this issue because I opened the Washington office of the San
Excuse me
Antonio.
just a minute. Could y'all hold it down, Joe?
My personal viewpoint is, one is personal and the other is for my profession. Personally, I opened the Washington office of a San Antonio and Austin, Texas law firm, and of course I love going to San Antonio and its Riverwalk. But what I also liked was we needed some small space, and the Four Seasons Hotel was on the border of Washington DC, right across Rockley Park at the edge of Georgetown. And so space became available in the Four Seasons Hotel office building, and we were able to sublease it at a below market rate. But what I really liked about that was that wonderful Four Seasons Hotel. It was about the height of the buildings along the street in Georgetown, and therefore did not in any way loom over or interrupt that. In fact, the restaurant, rather than being high up, was down on the level of the canal. So when you ate there, you were able to have a view of the C&O Canal. So I thought that was important. But the thing we even, on the opening night of the new law firm, we had a mariachi band in the courtyard. Well, I really like the fact that that Four Seasons Hotel started in Toronto, then came to New York in the famous Seagram's building, remember, which was fairly much set back by Mies van der Rohe, who said less is more. And I think that that was the heritage of the Four Seasons Company is very much in keeping with Charleston and what we care about. So that is from the standpoint of the Four Seasons. I really like the Four Seasons and had many wonderful years going there for special occasions. The third thing is from my.
Mr. McCullough, if you could wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap up. I'm a government contracts lawyer for 45 years, and what I learned to do was to read the federal acquisition regulation and the details. And since I know this is the conceptual review, I know what this deals with, height, scale, and mass as it relates to the neighborhood, the site, the surrounding buildings, and the city of Charleston. And I know we get a lot of material and other things that normally go at the preliminary and other stages, but so I think we need to focus on the direct thing about, for conceptual review, the overview, and I think that's what we're doing tonight. And I think further consideration of this with potentially a model, because it's 3 buildings, I think will allow us to come up with a better result. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you. Other public comment?
All right. Before we get into staff comments, I just wanted to share some context and some staff analysis. Number one, the staff and members of the planning department have met with the applicant team multiple times over the last few months. There's no doubt that the project will be a substantial improvement to this property. It will also be a substantial addition in mass and height. Overwhelming initial concerns focused on the vehicular access to the property. Specifically, a 2-lane entry from Meeting Street, which minimized pedestrian access to the main entry. Pedestrian-only access from Meeting Street is ideal, but a single lane is much improved and gives more space for pedestrians. Carving out vehicular stacking and then decreasing the width back to a single lane for an exit on Harbuck reduces what was once a more auto-dominant arrangement. A secondary concern was how the buildings could be articulated as multiple buildings, even though the functional parameter of being connected. Another consideration, as it exists today, Harbuck is tight and dark, and the project proposes significant improvement to this right-of-way, and then underground parking is a benefit to the project. All right, and let's move to staff conditions for approval. Number one, other than the terminated vista to the entry from Meeting Street, the main entry to the hotel is subtle and marked only through location, storefront doors, and canopy placement. Consider how the main entry and this terminated vista might be emphasized more. 2, the design for the ornamental metal comes from a great handrail precedent on Meeting Street. The design is used on spandrel panels, railings, transoms, and support structures. In most locations, the literal translation of interlocking parabolas, be impressed that I knew that word, is successful. In other locations, such as areas where the design transitions in direction, restudy how the pattern might deserve some manipulation or abstraction. 3, the design relies heavily on vegetation, which will soften the material palette and size. Vegetation is proposed for a variety of locations, including window boxes and over awnings. Greenery on buildings has been a topic of concern of late with BAR. Board should consider the building with vegetation as well as without vegetation. Board should consider conditions for success and what might occur if some areas of greenery are successful and others are not. In the opinion of staff, the intent of the 6-story height district against Horlbeck was to set back a 7th floor on narrow Horlbeck. Pull the structure back to reduce the impact and intensity of height on Horlbeck. I would like to add a comment that, and you can confirm this in a moment, but that minimal setback from 6 to 7, I believe may be where the sidewalk exists. So I believe the whole building may be pulled back. Okay. Number 5, a finding of architectural merit and context must be made for the BAR to grant extra height in the form of an 8th floor. Architectural merit means a project that reflects exemplary architectural and urban design, utilizes the highest level of materials and finishes, and contributes to the public realm, as outlined in the Board of Architectural Review Principles. Related to design, the architectural design uses rhythmic and recessed, vertically oriented fenestration and interesting details and adheres to other BAR principles. Related to materials, the proposal uses high-quality materials such as natural stone and terrazzo and brick. Related to the public realm, the proposed pedestrian alley parallel to and between King and Meeting Streets relates to other pedestrian passageways in the city and can be a benefit for pedestrian movement. And then related to context, the property is zoned for 7 at its tallest, and a consideration of what is visible and what it's adjacent to is what you need to give some thought to. Staff encouraged the applicant to use a proposed extra floor as a celebration of how the building meets the sky. The applicant has proposed an 8th floor that is pulled back and only occupies a portion of the 7th floor roof. Applicant has proposed an ornamental design and profile that is not stripped down as a way to visually diminish its existence, but instead as a way to enliven it. A waiver must be granted for the first floor height. Per ordinance, the maximum height of any non-residential story shall be 20 feet. The BAR may grant a waiver up to 25 feet on the main floor based on architectural merit and context. Any dimension above this height shall constitute 2 stories. 7, suggest lowering the top of the bridge element so that the portion of Meeting and Horlbeck is taller for the colored elevation. Consider how the direction of the conservatory and bridge element might be related more closely. 8, the bridge element is substantial in size, though lightened in perspective through the use of glazing and material. The locations for the support structures for this at the ground level are determined by the driveway, with only 2 placed at the center of the span. Provide additional renderings from Horlbeck depicting the view into the site under this bridge element so that the board can understand how the unsymmetrically placed support columns will appear, and also of the area of the parking garage. Number 9, provide some ornamentation such as at the corner post, the railing around the top of the conservatory to further enliven this treatment in the skyline if visible. 10, additional recess suggests a foot or 2 of the center portion at Horlbeck where the loading zone and parking deck screening is proposed would benefit the project and prevent what might appear as one very long flush wall. 11, related to the proposed pedestrian alleyway, study other well-loved passageways within the city for material, scale, and experience. Most are adjacent to smaller or setback structures. The success of the proposed passageway lies in these details. Detailing of the site wall should also receive attention. 12, the design relies heavily on through-block connections. Board and applicant should consider what built elements could be incorporated to encourage the use of these connections. 13, page 48 of the submittal appears to show planter beds that would impede the 10-foot wide sidewalk. Please confirm. 14, confirm the depth of floor systems which would allow the project to achieve the thin spandrel panels shown on the Meeting Street building facade. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval for height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction, with additional study required for the bridge element, waiver on the first floor height, an extra floor for architectural merit, and incorporating board comments and staff conditions. Thanks.
Brad, Rosani, Nick, or Stephen, do you have any questions, any responses to the comments that have been made by either board questions or staff?
And again, I'll try to be brief. I think there's a considerable amount of input tonight, and I think it's reflective of the importance of this site and the fact that it is a large building. That's something that we are not here to hide. And when we embarked on this journey, if you will, we knew that the height on this project would have to be earned. And for that reason, we've really amped up the design and put as much high-quality sod making, diligent mass making, and high-quality materials. We've really done everything we feel like we can do to make this a beautiful contribution to Charleston. Briefly, thanks to Ms. Minigan and the Preservation Society for meeting with us numerous times and providing meaningful input that has certainly impacted the design in a positive way. We certainly agree that the King Street view shed is critical and that the proximity of this project to it needs to be looked at, and we've certainly done that at great length. And I feel confident that we do not disrupt that precious King Street view shed. We've looked at it from multiple angles, and by no means is that going to be disrupted by this project. And I should remind everybody that the 6-story district as it exists today is 50 feet back from King Street. The 7-story mast we propose is 125 feet back from King Street. So there's great lengths gone here to minimize, the impact of this structure. Thanks to Justin Swebler, with Historic Charleston, and his colleagues. They provided lots of great feedback, and he also said some really nice things tonight. Thank you, Justin. I guess most notably, Justin mentioned that more can be done on Hurlbeck Alley, and that's a critical street. And I'm trying to get to a slide that shows Hurlbeck. You bear with me. So we know that Hurlbeck, it needs improvement. There's no doubt, and we feel fantastic about what we proposed here tonight with the new sidewalk. But not just the sidewalk, it's great architecture that's been provided at the ground floor in terms of large expanses of glass storefront. And we feel that that is what urban architecture is about, high quality at the ground floor and storefront design. There is service elements on Hurlbeck, but we feel like we minimize those to a very reasonable degree, and the building simply must function. Mr. Schwebler also mentioned that they would prefer that the 8th floor not be visible. We've minimized the 8th floor quite a bit, and I do feel like from the visible angles that you will see it, it will just be a nice addition to the skyline. I believe that there will be no disappointment that 8th floor is visible, and it is a very small footprint as it's currently drawn. Last, Ms. Parrish gave a long list of comments. I was jotting them down pretty quickly. A lot of them are very detailed focus, such about celebrating entrances, or studying the detail of ornamental metal, the bridge design. All of those are things we absolutely must continue to study because they need to be done very well to a high degree. And I think that's good. I appreciate everybody's feedback and critique. Thank you.
Thanks. For discussion and motion.
Tori, can you explain your comment about the bridge? You were saying
Sure.
push it down, but that makes it taller. That
Sure.
confused me.
So if you could go to page 48. Actually, I'll take the clicker. Where's the clicker at?
We went the wrong way.
No, actually, let's go to the end where the elevations are.
74.
74.
77, just roll that.
Okay. See right here, you get really these two, you get three. You get these three masses that have a cornice, and the cornice is really what speaks to the sky. Right here, you get the element that is the bridge. It is lowered. Like I said a minute ago, it's glazing and it's other materials, but I want to confirm that because there is another elevation in here where it really has this parapet that's something's happening across here and it's taller. I mean, again, detail-oriented comment, but, you know, establishing, is this a predominant thing and the cornice speaks to predominance here, or is this, and I really think it should be this.
So the parapet would go away.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah,
They can
somehow
solve
this
that.
would be lowered.
I got you.
This would stay the way it is.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not bridge itself on the bottom, it's the whole
The
structure.
and there was a comment about these. So, let me go back a bit. Just to explain that comment a little bit better. There are some renderings that
Is that-
show you the,
Is that your number 8?
probably. Yes. Yes, so in some of the renderings, there are, actually, I don't even see it on this one. Right here, almost like pilasters, starting about right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. These are structural elements for the bridge, and then there's another one in here where it narrows up and it hugs the driveway. I just, you know, that is the only location under the bridge where there are center posts, center supports. So I'd like to see that from looking in. If that makes sense.
Andy, that,
That does, yeah, thank you very much. I was confused.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I think the design approach is excellent and typical for the work y'all do. I really like, as y'all know, I like how they looked at the context and approached the design by pulling elements of Charleston in a fresh way. The materials are excellent. So I really, really like the project. There are a couple of comments I do have, but it's this conceptual stuff about the top floor. I think first of all, and I totally understand the public's concerns, but the fact is this was zoned for, they got approval for 7 stories. And so really we're questioning whether or not that 8th floor of a conservatory is okay. In my mind, they've met the test. They have excellent materials. They have given some to the public right of way. The details are, I mean, it's conceptual, so everything's great right now, but the details are going to be wonderful. I agree with all the staff comments, and the conservatory will be minimally visible. I do not think that the height, and again, I'm very sensitive to the height, but I don't think you're going to feel how tall this building is from King or from Eden. I think, I'm just going to ramble for a minute. I think the fact that they broke the building, that this is a very large project, into 3 masses, basically. The 2 masses on meeting are very well done. The building that they're asking for a taller first floor, first of all, that building is no taller than the building to the south. So it's fine height-wise. But I think that extra height, I understand why, because that loggia needs that proportion to work. I think that, I've been off in this. She has, but in Italy, it doesn't work unless it's a very tall space. I'm okay with the first floor being taller. I like the approach. My concern, though, after saying all that, I love the project, is hold back out. That's where you're going to feel the height the most, and I don't feel way around that. But I think if you go to page 77, that's what shows the elevation. And I just think this is a tough challenge for the team. If you look at this elevation, it's really a well-done elevation. It's just on Holbeck Alley. That is a lot of mass. That center portion only recesses a little bit. There's a material change, and I know why. There's parking behind it. But I just feel like it's going to feel very canyon-like. The good news is it's on the north side, so it's not going to affect light, but it's just going to be, uncomfortable. What they've done with the canopies, normally I would love to see canopies because it activates the street and does all those things. But I wonder, is that one more thing that makes it heavier? At the very western corner there, that's where you sort of go in that alley. Again, they've got a restaurant there, which I think would be nice, but I'm wondering, should that be clipped? Should you open that up more? I think my struggle is with this one elevation. I'm very confident, given what we've seen so far with the team, that they can solve it. But I just think that's the one element, the worry I have is that whole back will feel very oppressive. And it's tough. It's a narrow street. It's not a great street. It's not your fault that there are terrible buildings across the street, but I just don't want to. I feel like this is an opportunity. So that's my only. I'm not saying it's warrants deferral. It's just that's my one concern.
Thank you. Lou?
Okay, guess I'm going to echo Eddie in some areas, but this project is, to me, one of the better examples of urban design in this city, taking into consideration all the elements of urban design and architectural style, so detailing, but also interior open spaces, inviting the public into it from all directions pretty much. What is it open to? The one thing I want to mention that from King Street that nothing you can probably do about, but maybe you try. There is a connection to the King Street, this narrow alley, and it's between the existing buildings, but can you announce the entrance from that side so the public would know they're welcome in there. I guess we will be seeing more detailing as we go. And sort of interesting how you round in the corners, particularly on the gatehouse. And what is that material there?
Stone,
Stone.
most likely limestone.
Yeah, sort of interesting. it's just on other one there's a column which is interesting too. But so Hobart, the street, it's we already mentioned it's dark and kind of gloomy already, and getting another 7 stories there is. It will be even darker. Nevertheless, you're trying to introduce the details and pedestrian ambience there. One thing, if you look at these elevations, top floors, 2 top floors, it's actually terraces and balconies, but you encasing them and bringing out the masonry. If you lose the masonry, you will break it out, the height of it is a little bit, and will help to differentiate the progression of this facade. Canopies, you meant canopies on a grade level? Yeah, because it will be even darker.
Yeah.
That's,
What did you say, Lou? Say that
the
again.
canopies on the ground level. Interesting that you are planting vegetation on the canopies. It's kind of that's a maintenance thing. We'll see. I don't think it's ever will be light like that. So, but in any case, so one of the things I think you may need to look at that 2 top floors and cut it back. Open up, have balconies rather than masonry there. And I know you're sort of repeating that from Gatehouse, which is done very nicely there. It's kind of working with the rest of the buildings, but I think it will help here middle portion, yes, it probably needs to be pushed back and break the street line a little bit more. One more thing, I don't have a number here, but it's a sort of straight rendered facade, looking from Meeting Street between two buildings back to the 7th story. And you just passed it, yeah. So it's kind of seems like intuitively the vegetation goes this 2-story and then stops. So I think it also helps if you do not frame with all that metal above this 2-story and kind of keep line of continuing of the gatehouse, and have just balconies again, so it's not as massive. That's sort of personal look at it, but again, if to look what we have today and what it could be, it's great. As far as the 8-story, actually it's inconsequential for me. I really love the conservatory. It's actually, it's not that you're adding the residential units, that's what you need, but you're adding ambiance and amenity. And in Europe, we have a lot of that. And I think it will be very welcome place to be for public and not just residents. And visibility it will be because it's collapsed. It's not going to be that imposing from any direction. Built more. You know, it's our own. Other than that, I agree with all the comments from staff, and we will keep working on this, but I think I can congratulate you on a very good start.
Thank you, Luda. See.
I'd echo a lot of what my colleagues have said in that the materials, the design, the influence, and the inspiration of Charleston is absolutely in the architecture of what you presented. I think most so in the Gatehouse and in the Grand Hotel. Those are really the jewels of the project thus far. And unlike my colleagues on the Horlbeck side, I think that there's an opportunity to mimic another hotel in town by lowering the height along that area and still being reminiscent of Charleston, and that's the Mills House on Queen Street. If you look down that thoroughfare of Queen, it is almost the entire repetition of the same fenestration and windowscape. So if we go to slide 77, now I'm no engineer, this is the layperson speaking, but I think that there's an opportunity to lower that height, and then we may not like it, but bring the conservatory down to a lower level than what is on the 8th floor. And I would ask y'all to restudy that in particular. I know that it might get rid of some of the room space, but to fill in that portion above the parking garage and bring the two towers down lower, I think that we could potentially achieve what we're trying to do. Outside of that, the porta shares that are on Rollback Alley don't bother me. I do want to reiterate what Tori shared about the parapet on the bridge. But generally, I think that you're in the right direction. However, the height is of a considerable question for me. You're in an incredibly sensitive area. when we look at Charleston, at the Charleston Place Hotel, which I know is a reference for y'all as well, and for a lot of hotels and apartment buildings in town to get that extra height, Charleston was a very different place at the time, and we required it, we needed it. Charleston's just not that way anymore. We need to be we need to do what's best for the city now, not what worked for the city 40 years ago. But the access and the entries of the public space into the space, adding in the nice loggia and the green spaces, and it was mentioned earlier, the porous atmosphere to engage the community. It's all really great. I'm really, really impressed with that. So I did want to clarify one thing that Luda referenced, the conservatory as well. That is not open to the public. That would be only open to the residents of that space, correct?
No, it would have multiple uses, both for the residents that live there, the guests of the hotel, as well as people that would like to go to the restaurant.
So there will be, okay.
There will be weddings there, that's for sure.
What's that?
I said that there will be weddings there, that's for sure, probably.
Well, there's a ballroom at like level 2
Yeah.
or that type of thing.
Yeah, I saw the event space in the gatehouse and the other portion. That's really nice. Charleston absolutely needs the large event space. I'm not being facetious when I say that, they actually do. So for me, the 8th floor for merit potentially for context, no. Just the area is so incredibly sensitive, both on the King Street and King Street side. You are reflective almost at the same height with the building just south of World Bank. So that makes sense to me, but the inside 8th floor, I don't see it. But I think that you are certainly on the right direction. So, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question very quickly. That conservatory has to be that tall because of the mechanical drop?
Yeah, it's part of the intent to do that bullnose, that corner, to recess the well, exactly. We studied, very flat courses, and it was not the same, and you didn't hide the equipment back.
Looking at the elevation, it's really tall. I also have a question about the perimeter railing again. It's all on the parapet perimeter, all around the building. Do we want to ask for step in, step out, or something like that? That will help with the height, visibility of the height, maybe.
Can you repeat that? I didn't catch the last comment.
Which
The
door is
railing, all around, it's perimeter, and it's sitting on the parapet. What I'm saying is, can you step up?
Steve, do you have anything else?
I would ask you to take a look at the activation of the pushback building as it relates to the entryway, that loggia. It looks a little lost from the streetscape. And I think that will thank you.
Luda?
I think you still can lower the conservatory, because you're showing 2-story. Is that correct?
It's close to 17 feet of, from the deck to the top of the parapet of that.
Well, anyway, if
Yeah.
you will study a little bit more, that
Okay.
it will help.
Anything else?
You can say you got a list?
Well, I'm gonna let you go first.
Well, I would just say a couple things and not to argue, but I'm not as bothered by the height of the conservatory, because I don't think that height is gonna impact, it's not gonna impact King, you're not gonna see it, or properly for meeting. To me, that's not the issue, whether it's tall or not. Not saying that's not an issue. I don't have any issue with it. And I don't know if the answer is, again, my issue is really rollback. And I don't know how to solve it. I looked at the plan and trying to see if you can pull some things, but seating's the same thing. If you take some of the height down and put it in the middle, I don't know if that's better or not, because they'd be very different if this were flipped around and we had, it was facing south and you could, it's affecting the shadows and things. I don't know the answer. To me, I'm echoing it. I just don't know that I agree specifically on the solution. Don't necessarily disagree, but I just don't know. So,
Those things.
yeah. Anyway, so that, I just wanted to add that.
And of course, we're not designing it. So
Right,
so-
exactly.
So, Tori, I want to ask you if you'd help me with a few things. But if we could start with page 42. So, Brad, you started, and Rosani, and Nick and Stephen, and your, the organization of your presentation and allotment of time, it was thorough and professional, and I'm grateful for that. It made it easy to follow and understand, and when I was studying for it, I felt the same way. So, thank you for that. And then if you go to page 33.
I really can't read the page now. Maybe you should do it.
So these are like great structures, right? And so talking about the ironwork, if we look at the intricacy of this ironwork, I feel like it gets lost to some degree with the large mass of what you can see from Meeting Street when you're looking at it. When you look at this, it's integrated into the structure. Some of it's actually structural, but it becomes ornamental here. And you look at it, and it's precedent setting here, and I get it. But we have an enormous amount of it on the face of the building when you're looking at it from Meeting Street. And is it too much? And does it become too repetition, and the volume is just almost overwhelming, right? It's beautiful, but can it become overwhelming?
That's kind of in support of what I was saying. Rutledge building is kind of telling that.
So if we could go back to page, I think it's 42. If you look at these two buildings alone as a standalone, it's handsome. It really looks great. And I look at the first floors and the way they transfer to each other, and they just go together. If I look only at the south building and don't think about the building to the north, there are a lot of curves and tapers at the water table, at the roof. You have all types of taper with the water table coming this way and it's going. So there's a real consistency to it, but there's a lot going on. I like the balance between the two, but there's a lot going on there. And if you were to remove, when you come back, if you could have this, don't take this away, but if you could also show one by take the layer of the plantings off and show that and see what it looks like. Because on some of the windows, I felt like it was looking like 12 over 12, but maybe with the plan it was a 12 over 16, or I couldn't really, so what are the separations between the bottom of the bottom sash and where the solid wall begins or ends. And page 34. And this one's really tough because, like everybody on the board, when I look at your project, which I have, and I've been down to the site and walked around and looked at adjacent buildings, like y'all talked about, you enjoyed going into the alleys and discovering these places around the city. I still love doing that, right? It doesn't get old. And the comfort that you get when you find these little destinations, like at Circular Church, there's a couple. When you find these things, they're real treasures. But when you go to page 42, and I look at this and I go, okay, I'm looking at that table where there's 4 people sitting and there's 20 feet of space above it, and that's one of your spaces that you're capturing. Right? In other words, I'm trying to go through this plan and find those real intricate spaces like you've shown on those that prototype page. They're hidden in there. Maybe one's coming off of Fulton, maybe it's that west alleyway. But when you look at it here, it's his own version of it. But there's a challenge, right? Because you're trying to show this. I think the term that was used was great. Steve, you said it. Grand scale. So when you have this grand scale, okay, that might be grand scale, but those intimate pictures, I don't feel the same way when I look at this grand scale. Even though I like it, I feel differently than I do when I look at those alleyways and those little nooks where you put a table. And page 51. So when I really looked at this, and I keep in mind that this could have been my own screen when I was looking at it, but it just looked like the scale. If you took people, they're not scaled right, or something is, when you look at that, there seems to be a little bit of a scale issue as people are plopped in there or something. But that's your version of some of those intricate spaces right here. And okay. And then the page 47, 59, and 60 all basically showing the same thing. And this is nothing you hadn't already heard. The Horlbeck corridor. And well, I can't really remember. It's 47, 59, or 60. I think any of those must work. Yeah, or 60. And, when you look down that street, and you dealt a tough deck there, right? It's just a tough environment to work in, but it's almost as if you can't just give up space and make the project work. It's got to work, right? But it's those 2 big towers that are going in there. Is there any way that you can come up? At least think about it. Is there any way that you can come up to 4 floors and maybe set that back at 4 floors or 4.5 floors or wherever that is? And then maybe that could yield some additional outdoor space. And it's not a lot, but at least it could be a relief when you reach that point. And I always, when people include what you did, the real representations with photographs of every alleyway, whether it's Horlbeck or Clifton or Fulton or the alleys that are created by the new buildings. You didn't try to take the photograph so it didn't really show what it looked like at the end of it. You said, hey, this is it, and we're owning this, and I appreciate that. And that's all I had. Anybody else? So is there a motion?
I would like to move to defer with board and staff comments.
Sue's made a motion to defer with board and staff comments.
Can I add a couple things, not to the motion, just to say a couple things. One, like Luda started with, this is an excellent design. This is how buildings should be designed. It's a very large project. You've done a fantastic job. And I don't, if it ends up getting deferred, I don't want that to be lost because I just think it's very well done. I struggle with, I've said it 100 times, is Horlbeck Alley. What I don't want from my side, you said it well, we're not designing the building, so that's why I was kind of saying, I don't know if it's put something here, if it's flipping the corner, maybe it's some other thing. What you've shown us so far gives me a ton of confidence that Holbrook Alley will be resolved somehow. I don't, other than that, I don't really have any, the staff comments were really good, but they're all things I think I probably would agree with what you got into. So, just want to put that out there, because deferral is not what you want to get approved, but because it's height, scale, and mass, this is the time to get that part right, and, so I'm in support of that.
Yeah, and Holbrook is the biggest exposure of the building. So it's kind of most troubled one. And, interior height to me, again, is, even so, we have King Street buildings with the backdrop of the, taller buildings. It happens all of time, and it works. So it's not really imposing on that, but Holbrook is actually its own street. And there was obviously a lot of attention was given to Meeting Street, and it works. So Holbrook may need same for.
It's just much.
Yeah,
difficult
and
challenge.
it's and I think everybody's now kind of coming to same conclusions that we are almost there with conceptual, but having major street in influx is not warrants the approval yet.
So to confirm, Seaton's made a motion for deferral of the request for conceptual approval, and Eddie has seconded.
Yes, I'll
Is
second
there
it.
any further discussion on this? Seaton, how do you vote?
Yea in favor.
Eddie?
Yeah, in favor.
Luda?
Yeah, in fact.
And I vote yea in favor also. So thank you very much. It was a really great presentation. Thank you.
This is the minutes that we just approved.
Yes.
James Wilson, good to see you.
Good to see you.